Hey everyone, it's Ankylosaur. I hope you're all doing well. I've been meaning to put together a deck tech for my Erinis Street Urchin deck for a little while now, and I finally got around to doing it. So, if you've been curious about the deck in competitive Pauper EDH, and you'd like to hear about why I'm running the cards that I'm running in the list, or how I came to some of the deck building decisions that I did, I hope that you'll find this video helpful. I've had a lot of success with the deck. I top 4'd the RIW tournament with it back in June, and I know that a couple others have been picking up the deck as well. I was looking at the quarter 3 metagame breakdown video that Clay and Dallas put together over on cpdh guide, which you should definitely go and check out. There's lots of great information in that video. But Erinis Street Urchin had over an 80% win rate over the past couple of months. It's a small sample size, but yeah, it went 6 for 7 in games played. And not all of those games were me. Like I said, a couple other people have been playing it as well. But I think that it's a deck that's worth looking at, and I'd like to break it down for you and talk a little bit about how it works. So anyway, with the intro out of the way, let's jump into the slideshow and walk through it. I'll have the Moxfield link to the deck list down below, so you can follow along with that as well. Anyway, to start, this is Erinis, my favorite Halfling Ranger. I think they're just a very solid card in general, and I've built a bunch of decks around them as well, both in Pauper EDH and full-powered Commander. The one we're talking about today, though, is the most typical Erinis list that I see, and that's pairing them with Street Urchin. First things first, I wanted to talk a little bit about how Erinis synergizes with their background, and then touch on a few reasons why you might want to consider picking the deck up. It's all going to be pretty basic and extremely low budget. I've never done a video like this before, so please bear with me. But if you're new to the format, if you're new to the deck, I wanted to make sure that we're all going to be on the same page before jumping into the deck tech itself. So this is Erinis and Street Urchin. Erinis Gloom Stalker is a 3-mana 3/3 with Death Touch, and the ability that, whenever they attack, you return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. They also have Choose a Background, which lets us have a secondary commander, which is a legendary background enchantment. In Pauper EDH, that background has to be an uncommon as well, so we've gone with Street Urchin. It's a 2-mana red enchantment that reads, commander creatures you own have 1, sacrifice another creature or an artifact. This creature deals 1 damage to any target. I've gone ahead and circled the most relevant parts of each card. Because Erinis has Death Touch and Street Urchin gives them the ability to deal damage to any target, what you do is sacrifice a creature or artifact, and you can kill basically anything in play. This can get very out of hand if left unchecked, and basically take over the game by itself. In the middle here, we have a variety of things that you might sacrifice in the deck. You can make food and treasure tokens. You've got a bunch of expendable little creatures like Feral Prowler, or artifacts that give you value that go to when they go to the graveyard, like Ichor Wellspring. We'll talk a lot more about this later, but generally speaking, this is what the deck is looking to accomplish. You get your commanders in play, you sacrifice stuff, you kill stuff, and you win the game. So, why would you want to play this deck? And I think there are a few reasons for that. If you enjoy creature-based control decks in the format, something like a Crypt Rats, or something built around Armix, this might be a fun variation on that theme for you. And I should note, I mean creature-based control as opposed to like the blue stack-based control decks that are using their counterspells as their primary control elements. This deck functions almost entirely on the battlefield, using its creatures both to remove threats and to close out the game. If you enjoy aristocrat strategies, but are looking for something outside the traditional black-based shells in the format, this could be something that you're interested in. And it's also a ramp deck, so lots of big Timmy-style creatures at the top end to close out the game. If that's something that appeals to you, we've got that going on as well. One of the best reasons to pick up the deck, I think, is that so many of the combo decks in the format rely on their creatures to combo off. There's Gretchen, there's Tatiova, there's Abdel, etc., etc. Erinis' Street Urchin, just by being in play, can stop the combo decks from advancing their game plan, usually long enough for you to capitalize on their faltering and knock them out. The deck is also very resilient, and one of the things to note about playing Erinis is that you will often become the archenemy at the table because nobody is able to proceed with their game plan as long as you can keep shooting down all of their creatures. But due to all the sacrifice fodder that the deck runs, you can sort of embrace that role and take on everybody all at once and still come out on top. So If any of that is the kind of gameplay that you enjoy, this might be the deck for you. Next, I did want to touch on one of the most contentious parts of the deck, or at least the part that I get the most questions about, and that's the sticker package. First, I wanted to give a brief rundown about how the stickers work, because they are a bit weird, and they're something that a lot of players are a little bit unfamiliar with. So, first, you play a card that gives you tickets. Tickets are that little symbol up there. They're a little bit like energy if you played back in Kaladesh. They're just a counter that stays with you until you cash them in on something, in this case, a sticker. In this deck, it's all very simple. There are 2 cards in the deck that give you tickets, and those cards also allow you to put a sticker on something right away. So you play your card that gets you tickets, you can cash them in right away to sticker something. The stickers give an ability to a non-land permanent, which will often but not always be a creature. And it's important to note that the stickers stay on the card they're placed on in all public zones. That's the stack, the battlefield, the graveyard, exile, and crucially, the command zone. So if you put a sticker on Erinis, and Erinis later dies, when you recast them, they come back into play with the sticker still attached, which is kind of bonkers. If the card with the sticker on it goes to a hidden zone, like your hand or the library, you just take the sticker off, put it back on the sheet, and you can reuse that sticker later if the opportunity arises. And that's basically it. That's all there is to stickers. As far as playing with them is concerned, though, I should note, I have never actually peeled a sticker off of a sticker sheet in my life. I just take the whole sheet and kind of slide it behind the card that I've stickered like an aura, and I let my opponents know what sticker I'm using from the sheet. This works fine in the deck because you're rarely putting more than 1 sticker on more than 1 card during the course of a game, but stickers are what's known as a play aid, which is almost but not quite like a token or a counter. Mark Rosewater on his blog has said as much. You can just use scraps of paper to denote whatever ability you've given your permanent rather than the sticker itself. There's a bunch of ways to do this. Like I said, let me grab this really quick. I just take the sticker sheet, if this were the sticker sheet, slide it behind the creature and tell my opponents, hey, this is the ability that this card has gotten. And that's it. Everybody knows exactly what's going on. You never actually have to peel a sticker and put it on a card if that's off-putting to you. Just be clear about it with your opponents, and there shouldn't be any issues. So, anyways, the question is, why would you play with stickers at all? And there's a few reasons that I've come up with for this. First, the stickers give you access to abilities that are outside the Gruul color identity and outside the format in general. There are stickers that give buffs that you can't otherwise find in Pauper EDH that work extremely well in the deck. A lot of these are ways to make Erinis better, either by giving them +1/+1 counters when they attack or on landfall, or you give them trample, or a variety of other things that we'll discuss on the next slide. There are also a few stickers that give benefits when something dies. Since our whole gimmick is sacrificing things for value, getting extra value off the things that we sacrifice, it's a nice bonus. Finally, there's stickers that can make some of our little sacrifice fodder creatures into threats on their own. There's one sticker that, for instance, turns a creature into a 5/1 permanently. That's a huge power boost for a mana dork in the late game to start taking swings at somebody. So how do we get to the tickets to place the stickers? And in this deck, it's with these guys. These are our stickerers. I like these 2 the best. There are other creatures in the format that will give you tickets. There's an artifact called Ticket Turbo Tubes. It's a mana rock that will also give you tickets. But these are the best because they give you 2 tickets when you play them, which is immediately enough to use a sticker from one of your sticker sheets. There are other cards in these colors, like I said, that give you tickets, but they only give you 1 at a time, which is not enough to give you an ability. So these are the only ones that I run. We have Stilt Strider, who's a 5-mana 5/4 with reach, and when it comes into play, you get 2 tickets and can sticker something. And Finishing Move is a 3-mana sorcery that gives you 2 tickets, lets you sticker something, and it is also a bite spell. It's not a fight, so our creature doesn't take damage. It's just straight up our thing deals damage to your thing. It works very well with Erinis' Death Touch ability. It's just another way to kill something off while also getting the permanent sticker value. And I don't know, these are both reasonable, if slightly overcosted spells on their own. I don't think that we'd run either of them without the sticker ability, but they aren't embarrassing. Like a 5 mana 5/4 with reach, that still kills people pretty quickly. The bite spell isn't terrible. The stickers, though, are really what push them over the edge, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. Here we have some of the best stickers from the sticker package. Since we don't care about name stickers, like if you would if you're running the name sticker goblin, there's a name sticker dinosaur as well. There isn't really an optimized set of them. Name sticker goblin, you just pick the ones that have all the vowels that you need and go from there. There's just a set list you can find on the internet. With this, I had to go and choose what abilities I was most looking for in a sticker. Now, I should note here, when I evaluate a sticker, I'm only looking at the stickers that cost 2 tickets. Those are the little ticket counters over there that I've circled. There's a lot of stuff going on with a sticker sheet, but the first ability sticker on each of them costs 2 tickets, and those are the ones that we care about because that's how many tickets our stickerers will give us. The other abilities on the sticker sheets are possible if we get to cast Stilt Strider more than once, or if we have both Stilt Strider and Finishing Move in our hand and can save up some tickets. But in the games I've played with the deck, that's happened exactly one time. And getting 2 different 2-ticket stickers was still the better play. So in this deck, you can almost always ignore the secondary stickers and the big power and toughness stickers, as well as the name stickers and the art stickers. You don't care about any of that stuff. Just imagine that these are weird, permanent auras that grant an ability and can't be interacted with, and you're not far off. So in any event, let's briefly talk about these stickers. For the first 2, you're sacrificing a permanent to either draw 2 cards or getting 2 food tokens when the permanent dies. And that's a lot of value for your investment. Your 5/4 with reach has now drawn you 2 cards or given you 2 things to sacrifice the street urchin. It's either like a giant mole drifter or sort of like a wave sifter now. And remember, you don't have to put these stickers on a creature. I've cashed in a Utopia Sprawl that I didn't need anymore for 2 cards. During the RIW tournament, I put that sticker on an experimental synthesizer, which basically made it into a 1-mana artifact that drew me 4 cards. It's pretty nuts. You can put the 2 foods sticker on a treasure token that you were going to use for mana anyways, or on a creature that you were planning to sacrifice. There's just a ton of flexibility with the stickers, which is one of the things that I love about them. Whatever your board state, there's going to be something that you can sticker up and get that value off of. The next sticker is one that I used during RIW as well, and you can see that during my camera match with Paul from the Rules Committee. It's pretty simple. Whenever this creature attacks, you get a treasure token. This is extra sacrifice fodder for Street Urchin every single turn that you attack, and you want to be attacking with Erinis as often as you can to get your lands back from the graveyard anyways. So this is just, every time you're doing something that you already wanted to do, you're going to get that treasure token. You're going to get that extra sacrifice fodder. And finally, a simple one. This one just grants lifelink to something, which again, with Erinis and Street Urchin going, means you're not only gaining life whenever Erinis is dealing combat damage, you're gaining life every time you sacrifice something to kill a creature. I've seen versions of this deck that run makeshift munitions as well, which would be a very cute card to give lifelink to. And outside of this deck, but imagine a green-black deck for a second, where you play Stilt Strider and sticker up your Pestilence with lifelink. Stickers are cracked. That's the thing I most want you to take away from this little pre-deck tech presentation. Stickers are cracked, and we've only just begun exploring them in the format. Okay, one last sticker. This is the best of the bunch, though. It's the Flicker sticker, Eternal Acrobat Toast. It reads, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. As you'll see with the deck tech itself, there are plenty of creatures in the deck with ETB abilities, which means if you get this going and start blinking your other creatures, you're going to be making treasures every turn, or Eldrazi spawn, or in the case of the card that I pulled to the side for this slide, a food token whenever Brandywine Farmer enters or leaves the battlefield. This is the sticker you most want to see when you pick your 3 random ones at the beginning of the game, because it does so much work for the deck. In fact, when I was testing the deck for the tournament, I jokingly called it Gruel Ephemerate, because Eternal Acrobat Toast is so good with our game plan. And this is something you can't get in green-red. There are no playable flickers in those colors in the format. And there isn't a creature with this ability in the format either that blinks something on combat damage. This sticker is the only way to get this ability in Pauper EDH. And it's just an incredible ability. So anyways, that's it. That's my last note on stickers for the deck. If you have any more questions about them, or if there's something I didn't cover that you'd like me to expand upon, please leave a comment down below and I'll let you know the answer to it if I can. But with that out of the way, let's get to the deck tech itself. First up, we're going to talk about the mana base, which is where all good deck techs begin. The mana base is a hugely important part of any deck, but especially this one, since Erinis Street Urchin interacts with lands in a bunch of different ways. So we'll start with those 34 lands. It might feel a little bit low, but there are a bunch of non-land mana sources in the deck as well, which we'll get to a little bit later. And 34 felt like a good number to be at after a lot of testing. So these here are our bread and butter lands, the ones that don't do anything except tap for mana. We've got 10 forests, 6 mountains, a command tower, and a wooded ridgeline. I've seen other builds of Erinis that really focus on the ability to get lands back from the graveyard, to the point where most of the basics are replaced with tap lands that you can sacrifice for an effect. And that's kind of where I started with the deck as well as I was testing. But after several games, I found that I kept having draws where I wouldn't do anything until turn 3 or 4 because my lands kept coming into play tapped. I just kept wanting more and more basics, so this is eventually where I ended up. I even cut Highland Forest, the dual type snow tap land, because I wanted as many of my lands to come into play untapped as possible. Next, we have the fetch lands. I'm running 5. There are the 2 Streets of New Capenna fetches, Ash Barrens, and then good old Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds. These are excellent with Erinis, as you can sacrifice them, get a land, and then attack with Erinis to get back your fetch land and get another land out of the deck. You can do that every turn, every time you attack. The land doesn't go to exile after you use it with Erinis. No, it just keeps coming back into play, and that's just one of the best sources of card advantage in the deck is land every turn, land every turn. Another reason to run so many basics, if the game grinds on super long, it's certainly possible to fetch out all or most of your basics this way. I've had it happen before. You want to have a lot of things that you can grab because, like I said, the game can last enough turns that you run out of those cards. Next, we have the cycling lands, or lands that quote-unquote cycle out of play. Honestly, I wasn't sure where to put Racer's Ring and Haunted Fengraf into this whole deck tech, but I figured they were close enough to cycling that they'd fit in here. I've had discussions with people about whether to run Forgotten Cave and Tranquil Thicket over the Phyrexia All-Will-Be-One lands, like the Autonomous Furnace and the Hunter Maze. I prefer discarding my cyclers early and getting them back off an attack trigger, as opposed to having them come into play tapped, then sacrificing them later, and then getting them back off an attack. I certainly wouldn't fault anyone for running the All-Will-Be-One lands in their place, as you can reuse those multiple times if the game goes on super long. Because that's slow, but it's definitely a draw engine that my list doesn't have access to, except in Racer's Ring. So if you like the All-Will-Be-One lands, by all means, play those. You can replace a couple of basics with them if you don't mind them coming into play tapped. You replace the Tranquil Thicket and the Forgotten Cave. Those are totally valid things that you can do. Next, we have 3 lands that make tokens when they come into play. Very good with Street Urchin. These are just free sacrifice fodder when you make your land drop. Another reason to play a bunch of basics, of course, because you need 3 of a kind to get the token trigger off of the Eldraine lands. And also worth noting, you can grab the Eldraine lands with the land cycling creatures that we'll talk about later, as they do have the forest or mountain subtypes. So those are pretty cool. Finally, we have the artifact lands, which are by far the best lands in the deck. If I could run Ancient Den and Seat of the Synod and Vault of Whispers and the rest of the bridges, I probably would. They're so good since they're artifacts. You can sacrifice them with Street Urchin's ability to kill something, then attack with Erinis, return them to play, untapped, except for the bridge, and then ready to sacrifice them again to kill something else. And you can do that every turn. Every turn, sacrifice your artifact land, kill something, attack, get your artifact land back, kill something else. It's just such a strong synergy, and I've considered running other ways to fetch them out, like Sojourner's Companion, just because they're so powerful. So these are the 34 lands in our deck, but there are a bunch of other ways to make mana in the deck as well. There are 26 other cards in the deck that count or sort of count. I fudged a little bit on some of them, but they're mana sources in one way or another, which means that we have 60 total mana sources in the list, which is a lot, but the deck is also very mana hungry because you're activating Street Urchin's ability while developing your board, and a lot of our creatures are fairly expensive because they have a large power and toughness. It takes a lot of resources, and we're always happy to have non-land sources of mana around, because worst case scenario, we can throw a mana dork at something and kill it. That is always an option with some of our mana sources. So in any event, let's talk about these really quick. There are 11 mana dorks and mana rocks in the deck, a small selection of which I've pulled out here. Arbor Elf is probably the best 1-mana dork because you can combine it with Wild Growth or Utopia Sprawl to really go nuts on the mana protection from turn 2. Everflowing Chalice, I wanted to highlight just because it's both a 2-mana rock that you can play on curve, or a 4-mana rock if you need more mana and don't have anything to do, or if you need a 0-mana artifact that you can just drop on the table and sacrifice to Street Urchin, you can do that as well. It doesn't come up super often, but when it does, it's nice to have the option of playing something for free that you can use to shoot something down. And then Goblin and Archomancer, just an absurd cost reducer in the deck. He can make 2 or 3 mana all by himself per turn cycle. Just an absolute house of a card. He's much better than he looks. I definitely love seeing an Archomancer in my opening hand. Next up, we have all the various things that make either Eldrazi spawn tokens, which can be sacrificed for mana, or treasure tokens. Now, I understand that counting these as part of our 26 non-land mana sources, this might be fudging it a little bit. I may be cheating a little bit. You know, some of these guys cost 4 or 5 mana, but as I mentioned earlier, we'll take all the resources we can get at every stage of the game. And playing an Emrakul's Hatcher or a Rapacious Dragon on turn 5 both gives us more mana and, if necessary, a whole bunch of game objects to chuck at stuff. Hatcher in particular I love because you can tap out for it and still have, on an otherwise empty board, 2 activations of Erinis and Street Urchin by sacrificing 2 spawns for mana and then throwing that last spawn and the Hatcher itself at whatever you need to kill. I've done this a few times now. It always feels really good to have that 3/3 come into play, make a bunch of things, and then, if necessary, worst case scenario, you sacrifice the 3/3, but it cleans up the board really well just by itself. Also, I should note that almost all of these cards are great with the flicker sticker. If you start blinking any of these guys, especially the Eldrazi's, you can really pull far ahead. Here we have our land cyclers and other things that fetch lands out from our deck when they die. Again, note that the Ent and the Oliphant can get non-basic forests and mountains as well, so the Wood Ridgeline or the Gingerbread Cabin or the Dwarven Mine, all options to grab if you need those. And the Primal Druid and the Viridian Emissary, great sacrifice fodder that helps us ramp towards our big threats, which we'll talk about later. And finally, another card I kind of cheated on, but here's Crop Rotation. It's a good card. I wasn't sure where else to include this other than the mana section, but Crop Rotation is the best way to go and fetch out an artifact land to put it directly into play. You even get to attack with Erinis directly afterwards and get the land you sacrificed to the Crop Rotation back, which is nuts. Also, remember that Crop Rotation can be a surprise chump blocker in Dwarven Mine or Colony Garden, or surprise life gain from the food token that Gingerbread Cabin makes. Just an all-around all-star in the deck. Love Crop Rotation. It pulls its weight every time I cast it. Next up, I wanted to briefly talk about some of the protection spell packages in the deck. Erinis, I found, can become sort of a lightning rod at the table. No one likes to have their stuff killed. Nobody wants to have Erinis in play. So they get all sorts of removal pointed their way as soon as they hit the battlefield. So here are the ways that we have to keep Erinis alive. These 5 cards are all 1 mana answers to nearly every kill spell that comes our way. I've also strongly considered running Gaia's Gift, which is 2 mana, but gives Hexproof and Indestructible and a 1/1 counter and a bunch of other keywords too. I like that these all cost 1, but keeping Erinis around is very important to our game plan, so having a 2 mana protection spell might just be worth it as well. You can let me know what you think in the comments about that. Just, Gaia's Gift is the name of the card. It's probably worth it. I don't know. Let me know what you think. We also have one big protection spell for ourselves in Moment's Peace. I haven't actually tested with this card too much, but it's sort of a concession to the Dargo-Ketis matchup, which is otherwise just terrible. If Dargo looks at us funny before we get our commanders online, we're basically just dead. We aren't running anything like a Doomblade or a Go for the Throat. Just, our commanders Doomblade everything that we want, but it does take a couple of turns to set up. So if there's a turn 2 Dargo and they decide that we're the biggest threat at the table, we're done for. So the fog helps, as does Shiny Impetus from a slider to previous. There's just a couple of ways to keep that particular commander off of our backs. And finally, here's Whisper Silk Cloak. It's nuts. It's definitely one of the best decks. It's definitely one of the best cards in the deck for sure. Once this goes on Erinis, you're in an incredibly strong position, being able to attack freely to get those lands back from the graveyard, as well as keeping all the removal at bay. It's a very strong card. You do have to worry a little bit about getting it bounced mid-combat, as that can blow you out, but other than that, it's just everything that we want in a protection spell. A very good card. The next couple of slides are all about the creatures and artifacts in the deck that I chose specifically just to throw at stuff. You need a lot of cannon fodder for Street Urchin if you're going to control the board. So these all do that while giving us extra value in various ways, so we're not just 1-for-1ing ourselves all the time. This slide is a few of the most expendable creatures in the deck. Elvish Visionary comes into play and draws us a card, and Feral Prowler replaces itself after it dies. Voldaren Epicure gives us a blood token when it ETBs, so really it's 2 objects for 1 mana, which is a nice rate. And Blazing Effigy is often a 2-for-1 in itself. It has a lot of text and it's kind of clunky, it's an older card, but basically the most important part is when it dies, it deals 3 damage to a target creature. So we sacrifice it with Street Urchin, kill something, and then kill something with 3 toughness or less as well. Not bad for 2 mana. And these here are 3-for-1s, cards that either draw us 2 cards, plus leave behind an artifact for us to sacrifice, or give us 3 bodies or tokens or whatever it is to throw at our opponent's creatures. Genesee Enforcers is notable here because it generates 2 copies of itself whenever it attacks due to Myriad, so it can actually be more than a 3-for-1 in some games if you keep attacking with it. It's not the best of these cards, but it's pretty solid. I like it, though I've seen other lists that don't run it, and it feels totally valid to me as well to not include it if you don't like the kind of awkward 1/3 that has to attack in order to get its attack triggers. I don't know. It's something that I like. I've had success with it, but again, something I wouldn't raise a stink about if you decide to cut it. So anyways, those are our cannon fodders, but how do we actually close out the game? And in this deck, the answer is palookas. A palooka, if you are not familiar with the term, is a word for a big, dumb, incompetent, oafish boxer. If you remember the old Bugs Bunny cartoons where he got into the ring versus the Crusher, that's always what comes to mind when I think of palookas. So here are this deck's big palookas. We've got 8 enormous creatures that come down and deal a bunch of damage all by themselves as we're trying to close out the game. Rapacious One up there in the top left, that's a new addition to the deck from Commander Masters. I haven't got to cast it yet, but a 5/4 trample that can potentially make 5 Eldrazi spawns when it connects seems awesome in the deck. Fangren Marauder gains us a ton of life off of sacrificing our foods and our treasures. And I do want to mention the 2 adventure creatures down at the bottom here as well. These are great because they do something early in the game, like sweeping up a bunch of Abdel tokens or Third Path Iconoclast tokens with the Fang Dragon, or protecting Erinis with Dreadlorm. And then in the late game, you've got a huge threat just chilling off to the side, waiting for the moment when you've turned the corner and can start beating people down. We've also got some Monarch and Initiative creatures, which I threw in with the Palookas because there's other ways to gain a massive advantage and win the game once we've taken control. Plus, you've got some 4 and 5 power creatures here with nothing to scoff at, and can close out games pretty fast with their bodies as well. And don't sleep on the Stirring Bard's tap ability either. Giving something menace and haste can be a big swing, especially if you recast Erinis and get an artifact land back from the graveyard right away to start shooting at stuff. I've had a lot of games where giving things haste with Stirring Bard is exactly what I needed to do at that situation. So that's a good one as well. We also have our Palooka Tutor, Fierce Empath, which is so much for the deck. You need a sweeper, you go grab that Fang Dragon. Your life total is getting low, go get the Fangren Marauder. If you're going to miss your land drop, you can tutor up an Oliphant or a Generous Ent and cycle it out for a land. There are just so many synergies with the Palookas in the deck. I love it very much. And then once it's done its job, you can sacrifice it to Street Urchin and kill something off. It's a really good card all by itself. And finally, I didn't know where else to put this card, but we have our Sorcery Palooka, Rolling Thunder. Not everyone agrees with this card being in the deck, and I understand people's skepticism about it, but we are, at the heart of it, a ramp deck, and there are some times when you just need to, 12 someone in the head. It's a great way to close out a game without going to combat, and in a pinch, you can use it as a sweeper for the most important threats on the board. I don't know. I like it. If you were to replace it with something else, I would totally understand, but it's come in clutch for me in a few different games, and I don't know. As it stands right now, I like it in the deck. Last few slides here, we have kind of the miscellaneous other cards in the deck. We've got some removal and card selection that didn't fit in with the other sections. Here we have our couple of sweepers, Breath Weapon and Electrickery. I like Breath Weapon because it kills Malcolm, where Fiery Cannonade does not. We're also running a surprising amount of dragons. The initiative cards, Avenging Hunter and Stirring Bard, both dragons for some reason. You've got Fang Dragon. I think there might even be another one or two. Masked Vandal, which is on this slide, a dragon. Then we've also got Electrickery, which I wanted to mention because in a pinch, it can be used as a 1-mana kill spell on a mana dork out of Gretchen or something. Obviously, you'd prefer to overload it, but if you need to, having that flexibility is something that I value pretty highly. Return to Nature is a card that I run in basically every green deck. Just being able to have a disenchant or mess up somebody's Archaeomancer, get something out of the graveyard that they were hoping to use later. That's super great. And Mass Vandal, a disenchant that you can sacrifice to Street Urchin, which is great. I love that. And finally, here are some card selection spells. We've got Faithless Looting and Bitter Reunion as nice ways to put a land into the graveyard early, so Erinis can have something to get back right away. Revive the Shire is sort of a regrowth with a food token attached to it for us to sacrifice. And Reckless Impulse is some card advantage. I've talked to other people about it, and I actually might be adding in Ren's Resolve as well. Maybe a couple other impulse card draw effects like this one, if there are more in the format. I'm pretty sure there are, but we currently don't draw as many cards as I'd like in the deck, and maybe running more of the Reckless Impulse style effects is what the deck needs. Anyway, that's all that I have for the deck tech. If this transition looked awkward, I almost got it in one take. I really tried. So if you have any thoughts on card draw in the deck, on some of the card choices that I made, if you've got some secret tech that has worked for you in the past and I totally missed out on, please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you and figure out how to make this deck the best that it can be, because I think it's a very strong option for a competitive Pauper EDH, and I'd really love to see more people pick up the deck. So anyways, with that, thanks for watching all the way to the end, and I'll catch you later. Bye!